Linda only got with me because my mom was holding the fact that she'd helped her out financially over her head. Because of that, she had no choice but to break up with her first love. When I found out, I told her she was free to go. But Linda just grabbed me and kissed me hard, biting my lip until it bled. Then she chuckled. "What's with the act? Isn't this what you've always wanted?" Sophomore year, her old flame transferred back. Linda kept ditching me to be with him. The last straw was the night of the club dinner. The private room caught fire, and she didn't hesitate, just grabbed her ex and ran. I just watched her go like I always did. I was the last one out of the fire, dragging my freshly sprained ankle. That's when I told my advisor I'd do the study abroad program. I was the last one to get out of the fire. My hair, face, and clothes were covered in soot, and I wasn't walking too well. I was definitely the biggest mess there. The class president saw me and yelled, "Hey, someone give him a hand. Man, your ankle's really swollen. You need to get to a hospital, right?" They helped me over to some steps. My ankle was throbbing so much I didn't dare move it. The class president scanned the crowd, and his eyes landed on Linda. He walked over to her. "What's wrong with you? Are you two fighting or something? Your boyfriend's hurt and you're not even gonna check on him? Come on, stop messing around. Didn't you drive here? Take him to the hospital. That injury can't wait." Linda acted like she didn't hear him. Henry, standing behind her, tugged on her sleeve. "Linda, if you're busy, it's okay. I'm cold. I think I'll just head back to campus." He coughed a couple of times after saying that. "Got a cold?" Henry nodded. "A little." Everyone went dead silent, sneaking glances at me, mostly pitying looks. I mean, it's not every day you see someone's girlfriend openly fussing over her ex like nobody else exists. Linda took his hand and they turned to leave. "What are you going back to campus for? You know how bad your colds get. You always need to see a doctor. Let's go to the clinic first." The class president called out to her, his smile totally fake, trying to keep his cool. "You're going to the clinic anyway. Can't you take one more person? Besides, it's not like he's a stranger." Linda barely glanced up, her voice cool and a little sarcastic. "Are you done? Can't you guys just call him a cab? Do I have to spell it out for you that I don't want to take him?" The class president was speechless. "You!" Linda ignored him and got in the car with Henry. She never even looked at me once. Linda was deliberately trying to embarrass me in public. A week ago was our 1-year anniversary, but she turned down the plans I made. "You didn't tell me beforehand." I froze, gripping my phone. "What?" Her voice on the other end sounded even colder. "I already promised Henry I'd go to an art exhibit with him tomorrow. He just got back and doesn't know anyone, so he asked me. We can celebrate our anniversary some other time, David. Next year, make sure to remind me in advance." Sounded like a sick joke. She forgot our anniversary, and she was going to spend it with her ex. The next day, like some kind of masochist, I went to that art exhibit too. I stood a ways off, watching Linda fix his collar and then take his arm. They looked so close, until some woman came up and started talking to them. "Henry, you're back too? Long time no see. Is this your girlfriend?" Maybe it was all the times Linda had ditched me, but a nasty thought popped into my head. I don't know what came over me, but I walked up and grabbed Linda's other arm. "No, she's my girlfriend." The woman's eyes widened. "No way." I just saw her holding his arm. I turned on my phone. My lock screen was a picture of Linda I'd sneakily taken while she was asleep. I showed it to the woman and said softly, "And today is actually our 1-year anniversary." The woman looked at Henry with a mix of confusion and disgust. She muttered something rude in Japanese and walked off. All the color drained from Henry's face. He bit his lip hard, yanked his hand away from Linda, and ran off. Linda didn't chase him. Instead, she grabbed my wrist, the hand I'd used to take her arm. She squeezed it, smirking. Satisfied? It hurt, and I tried to pull away, but couldn't. Did I say something wrong? She raised an eyebrow, looking down at me. "A year and you're still just as pathetic. Last time you were drunk, you asked when I'd finally fall for you." Her grip was still tight. My whole hand was white and shaking from the pressure. "Well, David, I'll answer you now. Never. No matter what you do, I'll never have feelings for someone like you. If it wasn't to pay back your mom, I wouldn't even give you a second look." She stared into my eyes, and just like she wanted, she saw the pain and hurt there. A small smile played on Linda's lips as she pushed my hand away and went after Henry. I just stood there, stunned. A red mark circled my wrist, already numb. A year ago, after I found out my mom had blackmailed her, I offered to break up and let her go back to Henry. But she just sat there casually on the sofa, spinning an empty wine bottle on the coffee table, and laughed softly. "He and I already broke up. What's the point of saying all this now?" She pulled me down next to her and pressed her lips to mine, holding the back of my neck. It was my first kiss, awkward and a little overwhelming. I closed my eyes, trembling, thinking Linda was really ready to put the past behind us and start over with me. But then she bit my lower lip, hard. She rubbed her nose against mine affectionately, but her eyes were clear and cold. "What's with the act? Isn't this what you've always wanted? Putting on a show of pushing me away? Trying to make me indebted to your mom forever?" She forced herself to be with me to pay back that debt to my mom. But she never liked me. She probably even hated me. This past year, she'd been miserable, and she made sure I was too. I didn't know when Linda would feel like her debt was repaid. But the moment I came out of that fire and met Linda's eyes, she instinctively pulled Henry behind her, like she was afraid I'd lose it and hurt him again. Suddenly, I just felt tired. The class president called a cab to take me to the hospital. The familiar scenery rushing past the car window just made me feel weary. After a moment, I unlocked my phone and opened my chat with my advisor. "Professor, I'll take the spot in the exchange program. I'll fill out the application tonight and send it to you. It started in 3 months. But with the break in a month and a half, I could leave early. I had to handle almost all the application procedures for the exchange program myself. Over the next few days, I was constantly preparing documents, limping back and forth to the administration building. Maybe because I hadn't rested it enough, my ankle was even more swollen than when I first twisted it. That day, I just left the admin building when the pain got so bad I couldn't walk. I squatted down, leaning against the door frame, and rubbed my ankle. I happened to look up and my eyes met Linda's as she walked towards me. She just looked at me, her eyes empty of any emotion. Henry, beside her, glanced at me and tugged Linda's sleeve. "Let's go." Linda looked away from me and walked past. I looked down again, blinking my unfocused eyes. It seemed, aside from a little embarrassment, I didn't feel sad anymore. After resting for a few minutes, I stood up again. But I missed a step on the way down the stairs. I closed my eyes, bracing for impact, but surprisingly, someone familiar caught me. Her hair still had that unique, clean shampoo scent. The shampoo I'd picked out for her. It always smelled like that. Linda helped me up. Without a word, she started walking towards the parking lot. I was put in the passenger seat. When Linda leaned over to buckle my seatbelt, I turned my head, creating some distance between us. "Where are we going?" I asked softly. "Home." It wasn't really a home, just the apartment Linda and I shared off campus. I used to love calling it our home. Linda always ignored me. This was the first time she'd called it that. Linda bought some pain relief spray. Back at the apartment, she knelt in front of me. She lifted my foot onto her lap. I instinctively tried to pull it back, but she placed it there again. Linda frowned impatiently. "Don't move." I just felt uneasy. "I can put the medicine on myself." She rolled up my pant leg, revealing an ankle swollen to the size of a large bun. Her brow furrowed even more. Her voice turned colder. "This is you doing it yourself? David, how old are you? You don't even know how to take care of an injury?" Despite her harsh, sarcastic tone, the way she massaged my ankle was surprisingly gentle. It was so quiet in the room I could hear my own breathing. Linda was always a woman of few words. And now, I guess I'd lost the enthusiasm to try and make conversation with her. Linda massaged my ankle for half an hour. Then she went to wash her hands and make seafood congee. When she placed the fragrant porridge in front of me, I quietly said, "Thanks." The atmosphere was unusually peaceful. Linda sat beside me, her eyes slightly downcast. She sat casually, and the dim light cast shadows on her thick eyelashes. Her usual distant, weary demeanor had an added touch of melancholy. After a long pause, she spoke softly. Henry cried for a long time when he went back last week. I've known him for years, and I've never seen him cry so hard. My hand holding the spoon froze. Steam rose from the porridge, making my eyes sting. Linda said, "David, don't do that anymore." In an instant, it felt like something inside me quietly crumbled, crushed into dust. My heart felt empty, but also suddenly lighter. I nodded. Okay. She seemed surprised by how calm I was. Linda turned her head to look at me, an eyebrow slightly raised. After a moment, she added a couple more explanations. Henry and I are just friends now. He just got back, and he needs me to help him get used to things at school. A month at most, and he should basically be settled in. As she spoke, she took my other hand, holding it in hers, intertwining our fingers. Her voice was much warmer. After a month, I'll make up our anniversary with you. However you want to celebrate, I'll make it up to you. I paused. A month? Huh? What? You think that's too long? I shook my head and took another bite of porridge. That's fine. In a month, I probably won't be here anyway. My relationship with Linda seemed to improve. I was mostly staying in the dorm to study for exams. She was also busy spending time with Henry, so she didn't have much free time. But she started texting me first and would occasionally bring me my favorite snacks. I didn't refuse them, just said a simple thanks. Linda's eyes, deep as pools, watched me. Suddenly, she said softly, "You seem different lately." I looked down, eating, pretending I hadn't heard. Linda changed the subject. She reached out and ruffled my hair. "I asked you before how you wanted to make up our anniversary. Have you thought about it? I can plan it." It took me a few seconds to remember what she was talking about, but it wasn't part of my plans. I said casually, "Whatever's fine. But it's okay, you don't have to worry about it." In my peripheral vision, her smile faded a little. "Didn't you say before that day was very important to you?" The sweet food melted in my mouth. I said, "It doesn't matter anymore." Normally, Linda would ask why, but she didn't say anything. She just stood there under the dusty streetlight, watching me for a long time. Linda suddenly became very focused on making up for our anniversary. She would text me her new ideas for the anniversary, asking for my opinion. Sometimes I replied, sometimes I didn't. That night, she texted asking if I wanted to go for a walk on the beach. I was at a dinner with some student government classmates. I only saw her message, sent an hour ago, when I stepped out of the private room for some air. Linda had planned it in detail. Just reading her description made it hard not to look forward to it. I replied, "Sounds good." The next second, a message notification chimed nearby. I looked up. Linda stood at the end of the hallway, graceful, her white dress making her look even cooler and more distant. She stood out in the crowd. A woman, seemingly drunk, was arguing incoherently with her. She reached for Henry, who was behind Linda. "I just want his number, what's it to you? Is he your boyfriend or something?" Linda's jaw tensed. She didn't speak. The woman's hand reached for Henry. Linda suddenly smacked it away. "He is my boyfriend," she said, her voice low, an intimidating aura around her. "Now, can you get lost?" The woman scoffed and reluctantly left. Henry put his arm around Linda's waist. Linda paused for a few seconds, then slowly reached out and patted his shoulder. The door of the private room behind me was suddenly pushed open. "Huh? David? What are you doing standing out here?" Linda, whose back was to me, froze. She pushed Henry away and turned around. Our eyes met. For the first time, a flicker of panic appeared in her eyes. My classmate leaned out from behind me. "What are you looking at?" I pulled my gaze away and went back into the room with him. "Nothing." The dinner ended an hour later. Linda hadn't sent me a single message during that time. But as soon as I walked out of the restaurant, I saw her standing by the roadside. A freshman girl who had just joined student government caught up to me. "David, I just joined student government, and there's a lot I don't understand. Could I get your contact info so I can ask you questions later?" Linda's gaze fell on the freshman. She looked her up and down, then gave a silent, slight smirk, as if to say, "Who still uses such a lame pickup line?" I nodded, took out my phone, and pulled up my QR code. "You can scan mine." "Thanks." When the freshman smiled, 2 dimples appeared. Sweet and infectious. I couldn't help but smile back. After she left, I walked over to Linda. Waiting for me to go back together? She looked down, hiding the emotion in her eyes, and hummed a soft yes. She was even quieter than usual. Neither of us spoke the whole way, until we reached the guys' dorm. I was about to go in when Linda grabbed my arm and pulled me into her embrace. The distance between us vanished. Her eyes fixed on my lips, and she leaned in. I caught the scent of alcohol on her breath. The few times Linda and I had kissed had all been in the apartment. Previously, in public, she resisted any form of intimacy. I pushed her shoulder gently and turned my head away. "You're drunk." Linda maintained the distance, looking up at me. Her eyes were perfectly clear, as if she had expected me to avoid the kiss. She just stared at me for a few seconds, then let go and stepped back. I turned to leave. Linda pulled me back. "You're just gonna leave like that? Don't you have anything to ask me?" Her voice grew hoarse. I was confused. "Should I ask something?" She gave a slight, self-mocking tug at her lips. "Not gonna ask me why I called myself Henry's girlfriend?" She looked directly at me. "Do you trust me that much?" I couldn't understand Linda. She was the one who used to mock me for being sensitive and suspicious, who hated my jealousy. Now that I wasn't obsessing over her and Henry anymore, she didn't seem relieved at all. I made up an excuse. "What you said today, weren't you just trying to help him out? You said before you only see him as a friend. I trust you, there's nothing to ask." Fueled by alcohol, Linda wasn't as aloof and restrained. Emotions churned in her dark eyes. Just as she was about to say something, a voice cut in. "Linda." Henry ran up to her, clutching his phone, his voice trembling. "Will you come with me to the police station?" Linda pressed her lips together. "What happened?" I took a step back. "Well, you guys handle your business. I'm heading back. David." I turned and walked away quickly, cutting off whatever Linda was about to say. A month flew by. All the procedures for the exchange program were completed. I was leaving in a few days, and Linda was still with Henry. She rubbed her temples and apologized, saying the makeup anniversary would have to be postponed another week because Henry wasn't familiar with the clubs yet and couldn't manage without her for now. I was taken aback for a second, then nodded. It's okay. If she hadn't brought it up, I would have forgotten all about it. There was a problem at the Southern Branch Company. My mom was swamped, but she managed to find time to visit me at school the day before I left. But it was bad timing. She ran into Linda and a drunk Henry at the school gate. Henry had his arm around Linda's neck, crying, barely conscious. Why aren't you mine anymore?" My mom saw this. A confrontation erupted. My roommate, Billy, happened to see it on his way back to school and texted me. When I arrived, my mom's face was flushed with anger, pointing at Linda and yelling, "You're mixed up with this guy again? Have you forgotten what you are? How dare you betray David? If I hadn't sponsored you, you'd be worse off than a dog right now." Linda held the drowsy Henry. She didn't get angry despite being yelled at. Instead, she smiled carelessly. "If I had known back then that the price of your sponsorship was being with David, I would have rather died than go to school, Auntie." Seeing my mom speechless, a flicker of vengeful pleasure appeared in her eyes. "Your son is mediocre and boring. After all, you raised him. What good could he be? From the day you forcibly separated me and Henry and pushed him onto me, he became my tool for revenge against you." She said slowly, word by word, "If Henry and I are miserable, I'll make him suffer 1,000 times more. You." My mom's blood pressure shot up. She started to sway. I ran out from under the shade of a tree and supported her. "Mom, do you have your blood pressure medication?" She nodded, indicating it was in the car nearby. In my peripheral vision, Linda's figure suddenly froze. As I helped my mom towards the car, she followed. Her voice trembled uncontrollably. David, how long were you standing there? I helped my mom down the steps, not answering her. Linda stubbornly grabbed my wrist. Give me a chance to explain. What I said just now was only to... I cut her off. Are you free tonight? Her eyes locked on mine, and she nodded. I looked up at her. Okay then, let's talk tonight. I have something to tell you. After all, before I left, we still needed to have a formal breakup. Linda agreed without a second thought. But in the end, she still stood me up. That night, I waited for her in the apartment all night, but she never came. She texted, explaining that Henry had alcohol poisoning and she couldn't leave the hospital. Can we talk tomorrow? I'll come find you tomorrow. Messages kept coming one after another. Apologies, explanations, promises. This was something I, who was used to her leaving me on read, couldn't even have imagined. But there was no tomorrow for us. The next morning, after having breakfast with my mom, the driver took me to the airport. After boarding, I opened my chat with Linda. Before blocking her, I gave us both some closure. Linda, we're breaking up. I'm letting you be with Henry. The plane took off. The official yet gentle male voice over the PA system made me a little drowsy. I put on my eye mask, and as I was drifting off to sleep, I had an untimely thought about how Linda would react to the breakup message. After I confirmed I was going on the exchange program, the topic of breaking up had come up once. It was just 2 days after Linda and I had seemingly patched things up. My foot injury hadn't completely healed yet. A mutual friend of ours was having a birthday dinner. As I reached the door of the private room, I heard arguing inside. Linda, just keep it up. Keep messing around with your ex like this, and David will break up with you sooner or later. Linda said nonchalantly, he won't. I promised him a make-up anniversary the day before yesterday. He's already been pacified. Your hypothetical situation is meaningless. You're way too confident, sis. If this goes on, there will definitely come a day when he completely stops liking you. Our friend scoffed, when he brings up breaking up, will you agree or not? Linda was silent. A cold laugh from our friend filled the air. If you don't want to break up, it proves you like him. So, could you please treat him better? Not wanting to break up means I like him? Linda sounded as if she'd heard something utterly ridiculous. I'm just used to him. I had heard her say these exact words at the art exhibit on our anniversary. Back then, I was so upset I could barely breathe. Now I felt nothing. Linda picked up her jacket and walked towards the door. I'm leaving. Henry texted me saying his cold isn't better. I'm taking him to get in 4. She opened the door, and our eyes met before I had time to react. Linda's gaze was dark and scrutinizing. This is the second time. Are you addicted to following me? She thought, like at the art exhibit, I had followed them there. Was I not clear enough about my relationship with Henry the other day? Or was the compensation I promised not enough, that you're still being so endlessly suspicious? Linda seemed to find herself ridiculous and smirked. Or should I just not have bothered being soft on you? You're just inherently incorrigible, aren't you? I invited him for my birthday. Our friend came up from behind, punched her shoulder lightly, and pulled me inside. Seriously, can you at least ask before you accuse someone next time? I handed my gift to our friend and found a random seat. Linda leaned against the door, quietly watching me, as if trying to figure out why I was uncharacteristically calm. Our friend complained. She was just saying with so much certainty that you guys would never break up. It made me angry just listening to it. I picked up a meatball with my chopsticks, not looking up. Why not? The future is unknown. Breaking up isn't exactly a rare event. You could even say it's quite common. Linda quickly denied it. Not possible. She put on her jacket, her expression cool. I misunderstood earlier, I apologize. But David, don't say things out of anger. Not everything can be said casually. Her attitude showed she didn't want to break up. But she was leaving to be with Henry. What Linda said and what Linda did were always contradictory. After a 12-hour flight, I was just sore all over when I got off the plane. I got to the new apartment and finished unpacking. I opened my phone, and a string of messages from my roommate Billy popped up. David, did you not tell Linda you were going on an exchange program? It's raining like crazy, and she's been waiting for you downstairs. It came with a picture of Linda standing drenched in the pouring rain below the dorm. If this keeps up, she's going to die of exposure. I'm going down to make her leave. The next message came half an hour later. Linda is so scary. I went down and told her you applied for the exchange program almost 2 months ago. The way she looked at me was like she was looking at a dead person. I got super scared and asked if she wanted me to pass on any message to you. I waited for a long time and she just said no, then turned and walked away, like a ghost, all gloomy and dark. That was the last message I saw about Linda for the next year, until I returned from my exchange. After school started, I was busy adjusting to new campus life. I hardly ever thought about her. The only time was 3 months before I came back. I made my new relationship official. She was a local girl named Vivian. That night, before bed, I answered an unknown call from back home. Hello? No response. It was still quiet on the other end. The moment I hung up, I wondered if it was Linda. But the guess flashed through my mind and didn't linger. If things went as expected, Linda should have gotten back together with Henry long ago. Couldn't be her. The 1-year exchange program ended quickly. My girlfriend Vivian hadn't graduated yet, so she couldn't come back with me. After returning to the country, dorms were reassigned. Unfortunately, I was assigned to the same room as Henry. When he saw me, the smile on his face faltered a bit. Long time no see. Didn't expect a year to go by so fast. I pushed my suitcase past him without a word. The other 2 guys in the room were freshmen. Seeing this, they closed their mouths, which had been about to greet me, and just blinked at me. Henry looked at one of the boys. I remember you said you started dating someone recently. Make sure to keep a close eye on your girlfriend. Otherwise, if someone else likes her and steals her away, you'll learn your lesson. What do you mean? The boy frowned. Oh, you guys don't know? Our new roommate, David. His most famous stunt at school was stealing someone's girlfriend. Henry recounted the whole story with dramatic flair. The dorm room went quiet. Even though I was looking down, organizing clothes in my suitcase, I could feel 3 pairs of eyes on me. I let out a heavy sigh, preparing to request a room change. I tossed aside some clothes, stood up, and faced Henry. I told you Hold on. The boy who had recently started dating was looking at Henry with confusion. That's ridiculous. Are you, like, outing yourself as the other guy? The boy had a clean-cut look and a polite voice. So, you mean David's mom broke you 2 up, and then you didn't dare mess with a powerful woman, so you took it out on her seemingly good-tempered son? And even before David broke up with her, you 2 were acting like a married couple? I stood there silently, wondering if I really looked that good-tempered. Henry forced a smile. So you're saying David is completely blameless? No, he's more at fault than you, the boy said, counting on his fingers. First, he messed up by falling for a toxic girl. Second, he shouldn't have let you 2 openly flirt and get away with it, letting you walk all over him. Lastly, when you were just trying to stir up trouble, he didn't immediately punch you in the face. Henry laughed angrily and pushed his chair back. If you don't know how to respect your upperclassmen, I can teach you. He raised his hand towards the boy. I caught it midair and pushed it away. What right do you have to lecture anyone? I glanced at his computer screen, which showed an internship offer. Henry, the company you're about to intern at? The boss is a friend of my uncle. If you want this internship to go smoothly, you'd better behave yourself from now on. Henry stared at me expressionless. Then his lips curled into a smile. You reminded me. There's no need for me to keep fighting with you. After all, I'm the winner. Linda is mine now, isn't she? He grabbed his messenger bag and left the dorm. At the same time, the snacks I ordered for delivery arrived. I had intended to share them with my 3 roommates, but I didn't expect one of them to be Henry. I placed the extra one on the windowsill. You guys can share this. The 2 of them said in unison, thanks. The boy who had just dissed Henry said while opening a snack, you were so cool just now. Can you be like that from now on? Don't let yourself be bullied anymore. If someone's being a jerk and you don't want to cuss them out, just hit them. I looked down at my palm, clenching it loosely. Okay, I get it. Thanks. Linda and I weren't in the same department, but we still met on the first day of school. She and Henry arrived late to the student gathering that evening. Seriously, you two stuck together all day and still won't admit you're dating. Are you planning to wait until the baby's born to get your marriage license? Or what? Henry nudged the guy who spoke with his elbow. Linda wouldn't do something so irresponsible. Okay? All right, we know you're a great defender of your girlfriend. Linda didn't react to their conversation. Her dark eyes scanned past me and she chose the seat opposite me. The friend next to me hurriedly clarified. I swear I confirmed with them Linda wasn't coming before I invited you. I shook my head, reassuring him. It's okay. Judging by Linda's attitude just now, she planned for us to pretend we didn't know each other. I breathed a sigh of relief, figuring there was no need to leave early and spoil everyone's fun. Truth or Dare was the timeless icebreaker game. After a few rounds, the atmosphere reached its peak. Until the spinner pointed at me. The person who lost the previous game picked through the truth cards. Hold on, let me pick a good question. Linda, who had been drinking quietly, lightly tapped her glass on the table. She looked up straight at me. I'll ask. A strange, heavy silence spread, suppressing all the laughter. Everyone had different expressions. Henry, beside her, forced a smile and put his arm around her. How about I ask? After all, I'm his roommate now. I know him better. Linda slowly pulled her arm away. I'll do it. She spoke calmly. I want to know, how much do you like your current girlfriend? Is it deeper than how you used to like your ex-girlfriend? The silence in the room wasn't peaceful. It was more like the air itself had frozen, forming an invisible barrier, blocking out all sound. It was a tense, suffocating quiet. Linda smirked, pressing, hard to answer? I opened my mouth, about to answer Linda, when a call from my girlfriend Vivian distracted me. At this time, it was morning where she was. I accidentally hit the speakerphone when I answered. Baby, I'm awake. Can you tell me you miss me to coax me out of bed? Her voice, thick with sleepiness and a clingy, sweet tone, clearly reached everyone's ears in the room. My face instantly flushed. I quickly hung up, apologizing quietly. Sorry. My hand slipped. A barrage of exaggerated, playful noises followed, and I ducked my head lower. It felt like heat waves were rising from the top of my head and ears. This is what it's like dating an incredibly affectionate girlfriend. You have to be careful opening voice messages or using speakerphone in public. Once the teasing died down, I looked up again. The person sitting across from me had already left. A guy asked, Hey, where's Linda? She left. I think she said something like, This is boring, and just took off by herself. The lively atmosphere diluted the awkwardness of the little incident. For the rest of the night, everyone tacitly avoided mentioning Linda. Campus life got back on track. After our argument in the dorm, Henry was almost never there. He only came back at night before the doors closed, to wash up and sleep. He didn't talk to anyone. So that day, when he unexpectedly offered to treat the three of us to dinner, it was hard not to suspect he had ulterior motives. Henry said softly, almost self-mockingly, I'm dating someone. My girlfriend is treating the whole dorm to dinner. It's normal. The two freshmen, operating on the principle of never refuse a free meal, agreed. I shook my head. I'm not going. Henry didn't look back. Suit yourself. When it was time for dinner, I went downstairs with the other three. I was planning to get noodles at the cafeteria by myself. Running into Linda downstairs at the dorm didn't surprise me much. She was probably Henry's girlfriend. I said goodbye to the two freshmen and started walking in the opposite direction. Linda chased after me and blocked my path. Why aren't you going? I don't want to. I looked straight at her shoulder. Excuse me. She didn't move, saying softly, I booked your favorite restaurant from before. I don't like it anymore. I tried to go around her from the other side. Linda grabbed my arm, her eyes burning into me. It's only been a year. Your tastes changed that fast? Her voice grew hoarse, heavy with some suppressed emotion. David, were you always this quick to discard the old for the new? I suddenly realized what she was implying. I couldn't help but laugh, a ridiculous sound. A phrase I'd heard recently echoed in my ears. If someone's being a jerk and you don't want to cuss them out, Just hit them. The next second, I raised my hand and slapped Linda across the face with all my strength. My palm throbbed. I turned and pointed to Henry, who was standing numbly in the wind. Your boyfriend is standing right there, yet you're here harassing me. Linda, aren't you disgusting? Or is chasing ex-boyfriends your hobby? Linda glanced at him as if he were someone insignificant. She explained calmly, I'm not with him. I just asked him to make an excuse to get you to come out. I told you a year ago, I only see him as a friend. She looked down at me, her voice so soft it almost melted into the wind. But you didn't believe me. You treated me like trash, kicked me to the curb without a word. I stared straight at her. I belatedly realized that with someone like Linda, reasoning was pointless. If I accused her of having no boundaries with her ex-boyfriend, she'd say she was forced to or she wouldn't do it again and so on. But she seemed to have forgotten she'd said those things countless times a year ago. I let out a heavy breath. I enunciated each word clearly, emphasizing, Linda, I don't like you anymore. Even seeing you in front of me disgusts me. So don't try to win me back, because no matter what you do, no matter how much you explain, it means nothing to me. Understand? Stop bothering me. You don't want me to call the cops and make things ugly for yourself, do you? She gave a faint smile. Her shoulders slumped. She took a step back and turned to leave. The harsh sunlight reflected off her white dress, making her look for a moment like an overexposed photo. It made her figure seem thin and lonely. It was like Linda had listened to my words. And yet it was like she hadn't, because I had to repeat a year. I hadn't finished my courses. During class, I often ran into Linda, who should have been doing her internship. She would stand a short distance away, not bothering me. But just her presence was enough to annoy me. Once, during a public lecture on career guidance, Linda silently followed me to audit the class again. Surprisingly, Henry also came back to listen. The earthquake happened in an instant. Someone's water cup rolled off a table due to the shaking and shattered on the floor. It completely ignited the commotion. Chaos erupted. Earthquake! Before the ceiling caved in, I saw Linda running towards me. And behind her, Henry had fallen and was calling her name for help. The scene was so familiar that for a second, I thought I was back in the private room that caught fire. Except the roles were reversed. More than a sense of what goes around comes around, the stronger emotion welling up in me was irony. I was among the first to run downstairs and take shelter on the athletic field. Soon after, Linda also came out. She was covered in dust, her clothes disheveled. Compared to her usual elegant appearance, she looked a bit rough. How are you, David? Are you hurt? She grabbed my arm to check me, but I impatiently shook her off. I'm fine. I told you, anything you do is meaningless to me. A year ago, after I got out of that fire, I started learning self-rescue skills for all scenarios. Linda, let me be clearer. I don't need you. I had less dust on me than she did. Linda lowered her hands. I don't know what else I can do. Disappear from my sight as much as possible. I simply threw those words at her and left. The earthquake wasn't that strong. Henry was one of the dozen or so people injured. He was trampled when he fell, and his palm was fractured. He couldn't continue his internship and was tactfully dismissed by the company. After being discharged from the hospital, he moved out of the dorm. I heard he lost all motivation, holed up in his new dorm, and stopped looking for internships. As for Linda, she probably gave up on me too. For a long time, she didn't appear before me again. When my mom heard about it, she scoffed and retorted, "She's too busy to deal with herself." Linda had an extraordinary business acumen and was highly valued by a company, even participating in many important projects. That company was a competitor of my mom's company. In one bidding war, my mom won the project. The other company not only suffered a crushing defeat but was also found guilty of malicious bidding. The project head pushed all the blame onto Linda, whose position wasn't yet stable. Now, she was facing being blacklisted by the industry, unable to graduate, and a series of other problems. I was no longer bothered by Linda. My last 2 years of coursework and internship went exceptionally smoothly. At my graduation ceremony, both my mom and my girlfriend Vivian came. Mom pulled me to the school gate for a photo. I suddenly remembered that when I first started freshman year, She had pulled me here for a photo too. Except back then, I happened to see Linda and Henry standing nearby, wearing matching outfits and hugging. Mom pressed the shutter. In the photo, I was looking away at them with a lonely expression. This time, I was wearing my graduation gown, looking straight at the camera, a bright smile on my lips. It was like a callback to that not-so-great photo from 4 years ago. It was also like saying to my 4 years younger self, "It's okay. Just wait a little longer. You'll be bright and happy too."